Hey guys, Greg Denny, sitting here poolside while the kids are playing in the water and thinking about education. And I've got some educational non-negotiables. Like, these are things that I've been teaching and trying to practice with myself and with my children, and as I've been mentoring youth and families around the world for like 2 decades. And there's a couple of elements of, as I've studied and learned and studied education and studied personal development, studied the lives of great men and women, I started noticing these patterns. And then as I've worked in education and worked with youth and experienced it myself, there's a few things here that I just think they become absolute essentials. And I would even say, I'd be bold enough to say non-negotiables. Like, these are the things that have to happen. If you want to have a world-class education, you want to become your very best self, you want to be in a place mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually and socially where you are ready for what life can bring at you and this whole changing economy and world, and you're in a position to contribute and make a difference, then there's a few things I think you need to do that, like, you just have to do it, and it has to be a part of your life. You make space for it, because a lot of us right now are like, my life's too full, I'm too busy. And it's interesting that when something becomes a priority and we get really serious about it, we make space for it. Like, we all make space for the things that matter to us the most. And these are the things that, like, we have to carve out space. If something else has to go, so be it. Like, make space for these things that matter most. And this is as far as education goes. Ready? Here you go. So my non-negotiables are, everybody needs to learn at least a second language, okay? Something, and for some of you it's going to be like 3 or 4 or 5 or more, but something magical, something wonderful, something incredible happens inside your mind, and then your like perspective on people and life and just your understanding and comprehension. Something great happens when you learn another language, because when you get to a place where you're pretty fluent in it, you begin to think in it, and you can actually start choosing words, and you'll find that some words just have better meaning in another language. And you can find yourself bouncing back and forth and using those words. You start to wrap your mind around, and it's challenging, it's hard. Learning another language is tough for most people, especially depending on the level of the language you're challenging yourself with. But it's awesome, just that skill. It takes a ton of consistency. And I've found in learning languages, I'm working on, so I've been fluent in Spanish for over 20 years, and now I've been studying French for 2.5, maybe 3 years, and I go every day. I don't miss. I study French every single day. And it's coming. And I found myself that, spending a few minutes each day is way more effective because of the consistency than maybe spending 2 or 3 hours one day a week. And so it's just this time period, day in and day out, doing it, and like forcing yourself to memorize vocabulary and memorize and learn new grammar rules and memorize the exceptions to the rules, and then starting to think in different ways and learning the phrases and learning the translations that it doesn't always translate straight across, and it forces you to think differently, and it's an amazing thing. And then, you guys, when you do that, it opens up a whole world of new people that don't speak your language, but now you speak theirs. And now you can communicate and talk and go. Now, I realize that, like, the translation technology is becoming so effective, and people are saying, hey, in just a few years, these translations are going to be so efficient and so effective, you'll be able to communicate with anyone anywhere without, needing to learn the language. Awesome, because we can't learn all the languages in the world. But I still say, and always will, even when those things are amazing, I'm still going to be preaching, learn a language, because of what happens here and here, not because I have a device that'll do it for me. It changes you, and it opens up a world. I love this stuff. So everyone, learn a new language. Pick a language. Start today. I use apps. I use Duolingo, and I use Memrise, Memrise. Memrise and Duolingo, awesome apps. I use them every day. Then I listen to books in a new language, and I listen, and I'll start when I get proficient enough, I start reading books in a new language. I'll get up each morning and I'll study from the Bible in that new language. So that's what I'm doing in French now. But you start going, and then you have to just talk, and you try every time you meet someone, you try to say some new words and new things, and you'll slaughter them, and you'll sound ridiculous, and you'll make mistakes. That's okay. But learn how to do that. And I guess that's another part of the educational process, is in learning to speak a new language, you have to make mistakes. You have to be uncomfortable, and you have to be willing to go out and try and just slaughter it. And that's a good thing for us. to be socially awkward and uncomfortable in trying to learn to say those things. It's wonderful. Great experience. Okay, number 2. I think everybody needs to learn a musical instrument. Now, I grew up without that privilege and opportunity and blessing. I didn't do it. And looking back, I'm like, man, I wish my parents had made me do that. Or at least incentivize me or open it to me. I didn't get it. So now I am teaching myself to play the violin, and I love it. And again, something great happens. And you guys, there's so much science out there. So I'm saying something great. There's so much science and there's so much research behind languages, behind musical instruments, behind everything. There's a lot of great benefits from learning a musical instrument. Again, you're teaching yourself to think in another language, the language of music. And it's a great outlet. And I want everyone to pick an instrument. Just, again, practice consistently each day. Some of you will become absolute masters, linguists in another language. Some of you become absolute masters in a musical instrument. But learn a language, learn a musical instrument. I'm picking the violin. My children are playing violin, piano, and guitar and ukulele so far. And one of them wants to be a cellist. So go whatever. My wife did the flute. Just pick a language, pick an instrument and go with it. Again, something great happens. It's part of this educational piece, and these elements, the practicing, the learning a new language, the language of music, to read music and to write in music, to go through that process is a great thing. I would also add, you got to do the books. So 3. So first, language, learn a language, learn an instrument, and books. Always, always, always be in great books. And that can be reading them, and it can be listening to them. I listen to tons of great audiobooks, read tons of books, every single day, without exception. Every single day, books are coming into my mind, into the lives and minds of my children, all the time. While we're driving, while we're running, while we're biking, while we're cleaning up, while we're have downtime, in the morning, in the evening. Part of my morning ritual is reading. Part of my evening ritual is reading. So I'm reading from great books all the time, and I'm always pursuing books that are just above my head, that are hard for me to understand. Because if I settle for that, then I've condemned myself to my present level. If I never read a book that's above me and above my current ability, then I condemn myself to my current ability. Don't do that. Always challenge yourself. Read those books that are tough. Wrestle through them. Get into the poetry and the novels and the great books. Get in that the great discussion is what it's called. Learn how to learn. Learn how to read a great book. I would start with a book called Turn the Page. Excellent. I'm going through a book right now called How to Read and Why. It's challenging. Mortimer Adler did another one called How to Read a Book. And learn how to read. Just because you can read the words on the pages doesn't mean you can actually read a book. But teach yourself those things. Challenge yourself. I've got a great book list. I'll share it here in the notes. Get in the great books. Study, learn all the time. There's never a graduation from education. Make sure every day of your life, before you go to bed, you learn something new. You study something. We got a language here's an ideal day. You spend a few minutes every day or more learning a language. A few minutes every day or more learning an instrument. A few minutes every day or more reading from a great book. And you're just plowing through the books. Boom, boom, boom. Go through the best book. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of the best books. I went through about a 2-decade period where I averaged about a book a week. And even, that's not even enough. We got to keep going. So just read and learn. And then last of all, I would throw in there something physical. Now, I know we're not all athletic and we're not all into physical things. But again, there's something wonderful that happens when we're using our bodies in learning a skill, a technique, a training where we're getting physically tired, but we also have to memorize and learn and master movements. And that can be something from gymnastics to martial arts. And for our family, I think martial arts is a non-negotiable essential. You can pick any art because you learn discipline. And you learn confidence. You see this change. When you've got a kid, a young man or a young woman who they've been through the training, and it's hard and it hurts. You have to be consistent. You have to be rigorous. You have to go through the training and the fatigue and sore muscles and then taking some hits and giving back. There's something that just changes you. And if you're doing those things, you get this sense of confidence and competence. And you go into life, you're not only prepared to defend yourself if that ever happens, and hopefully it never does, but to defend someone else, or just to have it. You've learned it, you've paid a price, and you're like, I got this. I'm confident, I'm competent, and I'm ready to tackle things. And if we'll hit those elements, you guys, boom, amazing stuff happens, and we start earning a world-class education by really pursuing all of those areas to a master level. Love you guys. Awesome is always an option. Reach upward.